into the future, what do you see? I really need to know now, is there a place for me? If we're gonna survive, the dream must stay alive.
Authorities are appealing for calm throughout the evacuation process.
The Tribe, A New World by A.J. Penn. Chapter 17. The Mallrats decided to call their new home Camp Phoenix, naming it after Phoenix Mall, the shopping mall that had been their home back in the city. It was an appropriate name, given the hope everyone shared, that like the mythical bird, they too would rise up and survive. Life would go on, from facing doom at being shipwrecked in this strange new world. The image of a phoenix conjured up flames, and that too was applicable, Amber felt, given the intense searing heat that seemed to cook the very air around them. Amber was like a bee, buzzing from one place to the other, as she tried to encourage everyone and bring some semblance of order to Camp Phoenix, which was still more a name only than a proper camp. Her thoughts drifted to Jay and Ram. They had been gone now for what must have been a few hours? Though Amber had no way of exactly telling the time, relying only on judging the position of the sun in the sky. Jay had left with Ram to explore the perimeters. Before they departed, Jay informed Amber what he had discovered, with Ram trying to remove his techno markings. Ram had maintained to Amber and the others he had accidentally hurt his head, and there was nothing more to it than that. But Amber's constant distrust of Ram prevailed. To Amber, he had always proven from his actions in the past he was capable of being up to something, usually no good. Throughout their entire time on first the trawler, then the Jizheoli, Amber had been unsettled by Ram and his insistence on going back to the city. It just defied all sense, wanting to return to a city gripped by pandemic. Was there some connection between his extreme moods, changing out of his uniform, and trying to dismiss any sign of his markings, and desire to go back home? Or did he know something about this strange land that the others didn't know? If anyone could find out the answers, it would be Jay. He'd coaxed the truth out of Ram somehow, and Jay had told Amber he had been quietly hopeful that if he could talk with Ram in a one-to-one conversation away from Amber and the others, he would discover what it was that had so troubled Ram since the moment the tribe had fled, and why he was so eager to get back to their doomed home city. Ram was a dangerous individual, though. As much as Jay was skilled in combat, able to handle himself, Amber hoped he would still be safe going off into the unknown undergrowth with Ram. You could never be too safe with the former leader of the Technos. Amber tried to dismiss such thinking, instead looking forward to Jay's return, with Ram, and hopefully the unearthing of any secrets Ram had been trying to keep from them. Jack and Lex had been deployed to search another area, and agreed not to venture too far. All were just keen to gain more insight into the perimeters of their environs. As the oldest male left behind while Lex, Jack, Ram and Jay were away, Darryl had sincerely tried to man up to his responsibilities, and was pouring sweat as he sorted through great piles of palm fronds, branches and sticks to use in the construction of their shelter, Lottie, Jell and Sammy helping him out. Amber was somewhat surprised and displeased by Jell, however, who Amber spotted laying in the sun like she was lounging on the beach in a luxury resort on holiday. Jell, what do you think you're doing? Amber asked, walking up to her. What do you think I'm doing? Jell replied, as if it was all so obvious. Amber shrugged, her confused expression showing Jell she didn't know what she was talking about. I'm sunbathing. Duh, Jell petulantly explained, deliberately ignoring Amber, and went on with improving her suntan. Jell, if you stay there one more minute, I swear I'll... Amber, give me a break, Jell called back. You're not my mother. Thank goodness. This isn't some kind of breakaway, Jell. You either get up and pull your weight, or you get out of here, and have nothing to do with our camp. It's up to you. Amber stormed off, pacing down the burning sands, and behind her, sighing like a spoilt child, Jell reluctantly went to help Daryl, Sammy and Lottie in constructing the shelter. Slade was asleep now. Amber could see as she approached. His dreams a refuge from the pain he felt in his side when he was awake. Like before, Ruby was steadfastly by his side, watching over him. You should try and get some rest yourself, Amber whispered to Ruby, so as not to disturb Slade. I can't leave him, Ruby replied. She looked like an emotional wreck, which she was, her makeup smeared over her face from the tears she had shed. I'll stay with him. Make sure he's okay, Amber insisted. You've been here for hours. What would Slade say? He'd want you to take care of yourself. Go and take some time out. Gather yourself together. Understanding the sense behind Amber's suggestion, Ruby smiled, appreciating the help, leaving Amber in charge of Slade. Salene and Ellie were continuing to assist May in the ongoing search for Zack, his disappearance causing all great concern. In another area of the beach, Trudy had lit a fire with some fallen branches and was carefully holding improvised skewers of tinned meat over the flames as Ruby arrived and sat down to join her. Hungry? Trudy asked. This should be ready in a minute. Ruby nodded gratefully. Some of the canned food from the Jizheo Li had been gathered into a pile of stores. There had been no can opener, so Trudy had to bash the tins open with a coconut. It had been ironic using food to open food, she thought. Brady was crawling on the sand, pushing one of the coconuts like a toy, while Amber's baby lay asleep under the shade of some palms. This is kind of fun, isn't it? Trudy said. I wouldn't call this fun, Ruby protested. With Slade injured? We're all worried about Slade, Trudy explained. I just mean, in a way, this is an adventure. Cooking on the open fire, sitting here on the beach. The kids are certainly having fun. Ruby obviously didn't share Trudy's enthusiasm for the surroundings, their adventure. In fact, she took offence at Trudy's apparent lack of concern or worry for Slade. Trudy was being overly happy, Ruby felt. Unnaturally so. Come on, Ruby. Can't we just take our minds off things, just for a minute? What? And stick our heads in the sand, pretending that everything's all right? Because it isn't! Ruby replied disdainfully. Then she felt guilty, knowing that Trudy was trying as hard as she could to keep her emotions in control and spirits up. They were all struggling in their own ways, she realized. But Ruby felt there was nothing to gain by pretending that things weren't as bad as they really were. Mr. Claw-Claw! Brady shrieked, thrilled at noticing a crab moving across the sand. Be careful with that thing! Trudy shouted. I don't want you to get hurt. You're pathetic, Trudy. You really are. Talk about being selective with your concern! Ruby couldn't help herself. She felt Trudy was being insensitive, not seemingly showing any care for Slade. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Trudy snarled at Ruby. "Who do you think you are?" "Hey! You two going to cook up some seafood?" Daryl called, trying to defuse the argument between Ruby and Trudy. He was still working on the shelter nearby and put his fingers to his lips in anticipation at his imagined meal. "Crab thermidor! Magnifique!" Sammy appeared from the undergrowth, looking a bit sheepish. "Well, you look to me like someone who feels relieved," Daryl said. "Shh! No need to broadcast it, Daryl," Sammy snapped. "And there's no need for you to be embarrassed, Sammy boy. When someone's gotta go, they gotta go. At least with all that jungle back there, there's no chance of the toilet overspilling like it did on the boat." "I wouldn't bet on it," Sammy groaned, rubbing his stomach. Jill suddenly shrieked out, dropping a pile of branches she had cradled in her arms. "I chipped a nail!" she bellowed. Lottie let go of the ropes she was holding to secure the shelter Daryl was putting together and crossed to Jill nearby. "And I've got calluses and blisters all over my hands. Look," Lottie said. "Oh, poor you," Ruby mocked. "Not as bad as some others around here, if you'd only take the time to notice." She cast an angry glance at Trudy. Daryl focused on the shelter, its frame slowly taking shape, carefully tying on a palm leaf, wrapping it around the flimsy branches. But now, with Lottie no longer holding the base in place with the ropes, Daryl froze. In one swift motion, the shelter they had worked on for hours collapsed like a house of cards around him. He turned and glared at Lottie and Jill, who both sighed. "It's not our fault," Jill said helplessly. Jay and Ram wound their way through the dense jungle, the air humid and moist. It was incredible just how thick the undergrowth was, the shade from the massive trees overhanging providing some relief from the otherwise almost impossible heat. The jungle was alive with the sound of insects, the buzzing almost deafening, piercing the ears. Ram waved at his face for the umpteenth time as more mosquitoes swarmed around his exposed features. "They obviously like you," Jay said, leading the two of them. "Doesn't everybody?" Ram said, swatting at more bugs biting into his neck. Jay also had many bites, but he was trying to ignore the irritation, knowing that once you started, it was nearly impossible to stop scratching. "I just hope they don't have malaria or some other disease," Ram grimaced, itching an ear with his finger. "Think yourself lucky we haven't seen any snakes. Yet. They've probably seen us, though." "Can we go back now?" Ram pleaded, nervously looking at the jungle all around. "Doesn't seem to be any sign of anyone." "Yeah, we'll head back. But not until you've talked." "I told you, there's nothing to talk about. And I told you, I don't believe you. I know you better than you think I do. And I can tell when you're keeping secrets. What do you want? A medal? A promotion, Jay?" He had once, long ago, when the two had worked closely together in the Technos, Jay as Ram's general. Ram making an allusion to their past. But that was in a different life, Jay thought. It was all history. "I want the truth, Ram. About why you were so keen to change your clothes, get out of your uniform, scratch away your techno markings." "That's my business," Ram insisted. "Oh, I don't think so. And you'd better tell me why it's been so important to you to want to go back to the city we fled. Why? Is there something out here that you know about? Come on, Ram. Your behaviour's been extreme from the moment we arrived in this godforsaken place.